A new CEPR Press ebook focuses not on the complexity of climate policy, but on ideas that it considers to be no-brainers or low-hanging fruit. So what are these policies and how far do they get us towards net zero? I asked one of the editors of the ebook. Hello, Alex.
Hi, Tim.
Alex, when you hear a lot of people involved in climate change policy, they talk about how difficult it is. So in the title of your book, you talk about no-brainers and low-hanging fruit. Are there really no-brainers and low-hanging fruit?
Oh, yes, there are. And so it's clear that climate policy is a very, very difficult thing, both from a political perspective as well as from a technological perspective. But that doesn't exclude the possibility that at the country level there are no-brainers and low-hanging fruit in climate policy. And throughout the chapters of the book, the authors that contributed to the book identify many of those low-hanging fruit and no-brainers. But it's also clear that not every no-brainer, so something which we would say this is a measure that governments have to implement, is a low-hanging fruit, so it's easy to implement. Okay, so that's the one thing that we also learned from reading across the book and across these chapters. And it is also true that in some regions there are no low-hanging fruit because the environment is simply too difficult. For example, that is emphasized in the country-specific chapter on the Middle East and North Africa, where they say it's really, really difficult, the environment that we are facing, because if we introduce, for example, carbon tax, or if we eliminate energy subsidies, then the poor are going to suffer, and we don't have a tax and transfer system to compensate them. So what is a good measure depends on the country.
Now, also, you took a country-by-country approach when most of the time we think about these policies as having to be implemented globally. Why did you focus on this country approach? Which countries did you go to?
So we thought when we asked for country-specific chapters that if you have in mind measures that are relatively easy to implement, if you start from that, then it must depend on the situation in the specific country, because geography is a bit different, institutions are different, political constraints are different across countries. So what works in one country need not necessarily work in another country. At the same time, one country can learn from other countries. And if you think about climate change, yes, there need to be globally agreed upon targets that we want to achieve in terms of reductions in CO2 emissions. But how to achieve that is a country-specific question, which measures to take. And so that's how we approached this project. And then we asked around, you asked me how we selected the countries. But first of all, it was clear that we wanted to have the big emitters, like China and the US in there. And we wanted to have the entire globe and large countries. So we wanted to have India, we wanted to have Australia, and we wanted to have many European countries as well, and some in South America and in Africa. So we tried to span everything. And so the constraint that we faced was that not everybody whom we addressed and asked for a chapter responded positively. So there we ran into constraints. And so then we ended up with a total of 18 countries, one on the EU, which is somewhere in between, and 3 overarching theme chapters, so a total of 22 chapters overall.
Now, it would have been a somewhat dull, though important book if everyone had come back with the same ideas, but it's anything but when you look at it. Were you surprised at just the wide variety of low-hanging fruit and no-brainers that the economists were considering?
No, actually not. I mean, that didn't caught us a surprise, because we thought from the very beginning that the measures must depend on the environmental aspects in the country, the institutional environment, and so forth. And just to give one example, Denmark is clearly already at the forefront of measures that are already taken, and more developed regions are lagging behind in terms of what is already implemented, and that already shows that measures that Denmark has to implement to achieve more must be at a different technology frontier than measures in other countries. So we kind of expected it. What we learned from reading the chapters is that we should have, when we asked for the chapters, probably made clearer the distinction between political no-brainers and technological no-brainers. Okay, so that was not really a surprise, because there was always this possibility that would come, but that we could have made a bit clearer from the outset.
Yes, this problem of what is a political no-brainer, all the countries that are covered in this book would at least nominally say that they're committed to climate change. So are you surprised perhaps that these no-brainers are not implemented already?
No, exactly. I mean, this is where the political constraints come in. And there's another aspect which I want to emphasize related to this, is what is a no-brainer for you might not be a no-brainer for me. So let me give one example. The chapter on France explicitly says that France did not make the same mistake as Germany to exit from nuclear energy. And the chapters on Germany, they don't really address that aspect, but in Germany there's currently, given that I'm German, let me just say that there's currently a big policy debate, or some policy debate, if we should exit from the exit and re-entry into nuclear energy. And you might say that's a no-brainer to do, but others have different opinions on that. So this is another aspect that is important to keep in mind.
How far are the policies in this ebook likely to get us towards net zero compared to the really hard, tough, multinational policy initiatives that we're likely to hear a lot about because they're going to dominate COP26?
So I cannot give an answer to that question, because we did not aggregate across the measures, and some chapters also said it needs a little bit time to implement these measures, so all of that doesn't come into one. So I can clearly not answer that question. But this is what needs to be done once on a global level we agree on targets to achieve. Then you break it down into measures at a country-specific level. And here I think our book can make a very, very valuable contribution, because we have all of these measures to implement, and at the same time, with the cross-country perspective, one country can learn from another. And that is one of the learnings that we as editors of the book also had from doing the job.
Alex, how optimistic are you about COP26? Do you think it might remove some of these political roadblocks that are getting in the way of the adoption of some of the policies that are mentioned here?
But I think it's one more important step along the road. So I think it's not going to turn down the walls. So I think it's taking out another brick. And so we go step by step in this process. But overall, I'm optimistic that gradually we will get there and turn around the wheel.
Well, Alex, congratulations on the book. Thank you very much for talking to me about it.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
The book is called No-Brainers and Low-Hanging Fruit in National Climate Policy, and the editors are Francesco Caselli, Alexander Ludwig, and Rick van der Plug. It's free and open access at VoxEU. You can download it using this link. Well, thanks for watching, and remember to keep up with all our coverage of climate policy on VoxEU and also CEPR.org.